But I also come from one of those families where they just kind of believe that that's not necessarily the best thing for you to do.
The Abundant Wallet.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for your time. I'm kind of curious because it sounds like you have a really vast and robust healthcare background. How did you get into that?
Oddly enough, in college, I was an artist. I still paint. I had a full scholarship to Xavier University in art, but I also come from one of those families where they just kind of believe that that's not necessarily the best thing for you to do. So my grandmother pulled me aside and she said, your parents aren't going to tell you this. She said, this is not where we come from. She said, you're not going to be a starving artist. She said, I understand that you're good at this. She said, but this is a hobby. And I was like, Mimi, no, but I'm good. I'm really good. She said, you're not going to make any money painting. She said, you have three options. She said, you can go into medicine, you can be an attorney, she said, or you can follow the family business and go into real estate.
So, okay, you have family members that have done real estate.
Yeah, they've done real estate for quite some time. My great aunt is Ursula Rochon. She built much of the Faubourg Marigny in New Orleans. She was a free woman of color. They called us Creole at the time, but she held notes. She bought property. She actually created the Creole Cottage.
My gosh, that's impressive. Wow.
So I changed my major. I went to Tulane. I did pre-med biology with a minor in psych. I got to my senior year and realized that I did not have the passion for medicine because blood and guts was not my thing. I was like, this is me. You have to be passionate about what you're doing in order to be successful at it. You can't just go chase money. I mean, could I have studied and forced my way through it? Yes, but I hated it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Quit that, joined the rat race. I got a job with the Ritz-Carlton as their spa buyer.
Wow.
With that, Katrina happened. We evacuated the hotel and they relocated me to DC. So I worked for them for another 2-3 years. I left them. I went to Louis Vuitton. I was with Louis Vuitton for almost 8. And then there was something in me that said that I needed to go back home. I just wanted to go back home.
Okay.
So I asked them to relocate me back to New Orleans. So Louis Vuitton moved me back down. I worked for Louis in New Orleans for about a year. And then in 2015, that same thing hit me. I'm like, this is fun and my closet is cool.
But you're not changing lives.
This isn't doing anything for me. Like I'm a creative at heart. I'm not getting anything from this.
Yep.
And I knew it was the moment because one of the rookie players came into the store one night and they used to assign me to all the players because I was one of their top buyers. So he had an appointment, he came in and he had like $50,000 worth of stuff. And I looked at him and I said, this is not what you want to do. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you don't need to do this. Don't do this. He was like, are you talking me out of it? I said, I'm absolutely talking you out of this. I said, you're young. I said, I already know what your contract is. I said, because Louis tells us. I said, at this rate, you're going to be broke in the next couple of years. I said, my advice, pick out one thing, buy one thing.
Yeah.
I said, and then take the rest of this money and then go buy some property. And I resigned from them within 2 weeks of that conversation.
But you give the right advice. That's great. You were thinking about someone else's future.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So after I resigned, I went back to Xavier. One of my professors was Dr. John Scott at the time, who, God rest his soul, he's an amazing man. But when I walked in, he looked at me, he said, Rochon, I told you you'd be back. I said, I'm back, Dr. Scott. I said, but it's not for art. I said, I'm back for psychology. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I've noticed a lot in the city has changed. The infrastructure has changed. They've closed all of the mental health facilities. Crime is all over the city. It's more brazen. The offender is a lot younger. I said, and I think there's a true need in this city right now for mental health. He said, well, why are you coming over here to see me? I said, because I don't want to just do mental health. I want to do art therapy. And he was like, okay. He said, well, go upstairs and see Dr. Hammer. He said, I don't think that's a bad idea. He said, well, let's see, what you can do with that.
Yeah.
So I went and I talked to Dr. Hammer. I said, I have an idea for my master's thesis. I said, and I want to do it with Xavier. He said, well, what's your concept? I said, I believe that with untreated PTSD, people can start to exhibit sociopathic traits.
Yeah.
I said, and I want to use art therapy as a module to see if this is something that we can revert almost. He said, oh, he was like, okay. He said, I'm not against it, but he said, do you know what you're getting into? I said, I absolutely know what I'm getting into. So I talked to a couple of judges. The judges agreed to put me in the juvenile justice system. So I worked a lot in juvie to try to reduce the reoffender rate using art therapy.
Okay.
They put me in the recovery schools. I will never forget, they put me in one of the worst ones, and I walked in, and New Orleans is very segmented as far as culture. And I think with the way that it was established with the three hierarchies of free people of color, enslaved people, and then European settlers, I think that was something that hasn't yet been broken. It's one of those untold things in the city.
Okay.
So when I walked into this classroom, all these kids looked at me like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Why did you come all the way from uptown to come? Why are you here? Who? I felt like Michelle Pfeiffer. And I said, look, I'm gonna let you guys get it out. I said, get it all out. I said, I'm not afraid to be here. I said, I want to help you. I said, this is not another Teach for America type situation. I said, I actually want to know where you came from and how we can repair what's going on and why the city has so much crime and violence. I said, which I believe comes a lot from trauma.
Yeah.
So I worked with a lot of those kids for years. I kept a lot of them out of prison. I sent a couple of them to college. A few of them as adults right now, they still see us. If they have something that happens, trauma, anything, they call Miss Rochon. I need to talk to one of the therapists.
Wow. Incredible.
So that's how that happened.
Yeah. So in your mind, you already had a vision probably before you even went back to Xavier, right?
Yeah.
Incredible.
It was, it just, the old New Orleans, pre-Katrina and post-Katrina are two very different cities, very, very different cities.
Okay.
And the removal of mental health within that, and then uprooting certain areas and the disparaging issues that they had with real estate and where people were staying, I think contributed to that greatly. And I don't think they've truly recovered. I think they're recovering, but this is 20 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge process. It's almost like, that area didn't have the resources, probably not as bad as like what Puerto Rico went through, but still it took a long time to recover.
For them to recover.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that, I looked at what happened in California with the Palisades fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it broke my heart because I thought the same thing. I'm like, here you have another situation where you have hundreds of thousands of people that have been displaced. And, as adults, we take it on the chin and we recover as we should, even though we're not necessarily supposed to do that. That's how burnout happens.
Yep.
But when you have kids, you hold it, but the kids don't know what to do with it. So I really hope, and I would like to think that we've learned enough from the mistakes that we've made in the past, that there is some type of mental health aid being given to all of the kids affected from being displaced. Because the grief behind losing everything in a matter of minutes, and then the terror, it's the same thing. The terror of trying to get out of a situation and you don't know how you're going to escape, be it floodwater or fire. You have two compounding issues that you have to deal with.
Yeah, that's tough. Mental health is important, but I also feel that people don't treat it as well as your physical health.
They don't, because in Western civilization, we aren't preventative. We are reactive. Yeah. So if it's not broken, bleeding, or you can't see it with an x-ray, then it must be fine.
Okay. Yeah.
And then in a lot of Black and brown communities, I'm going to say it's a lot better now, but in the past, I'd say the generation before us, they didn't necessarily believe in mental health, because if it was mental health, then you had to be crazy, right? And I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
So, you hear several things: get over it, deal with it. This is life, pray about it, and then just keep going. But eventually you burn out. And that's why right now, one of the number one causes for health concern is mental health, because we haven't addressed it for generations.
Yeah. It's almost like a cultural / socioeconomic thing.
Yeah.
Right. Because like my girlfriend's Puerto Rican, and I asked her like a couple of times, what do you do for grief? And she's like, what do you mean? What do we do? Like, we just move on.
You just move on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like we don't do that. And the funny thing is my daughter she's a licensed social worker, but she works in a mental health facility helping people of all ages. And even her herself, she believes in it so much. She has her own counselor for herself. And I'm like, yeah, this is totally needed. Like, I remember how taboo it was when I went, maybe when I was, I don't know, 10 or 12, and I was acting out emotionally or whatever. And it was just not fun. But as an adult, as a young adult, it was the best thing. Like, it was the best thing because it's not just that you need to know right from wrong, but like it's nice to vet things against a professional. And I always came out better than when I started. So I knew I had good sessions. So yeah.
I feel like I'll tell people therapy is not, I feel like receiving therapy is a way for you to organize everything that's going on in your head.
Okay.
Because when you're under grief or you're stress, trauma, PTSD, you tend to overthink and there's a lot of anxiety. So it's a way for you to talk through all of those things with somebody to get guidance, like you said, from a professional, so that you can compartmentalize and understand what you're going through so that you don't think you're crazy.
Yeah. That's another avenue too, is like, if you only have yourself and you don't have that mediator or friend that you can confide in because, they have loose lips or whatever, you'll hear it from everyone else. You need to find that person. Yeah, for sure. It's pretty interesting though, that maybe you couldn't do that with anything else other than art, like music. Like what if
We use music too.
do you? Okay.
We use music, we use poetry. We have a theatrical therapist where she uses a lot of improv and things like that. We use drawing, we use painting. It just depends on the methodology and the patient and which one we feel is the most appropriate to help them get through whatever they're getting through. We use breath work, we use meditation, along with the therapists actually having the conversations. There's a lot of things that we incorporate to help regulate the nervous system.
That's great. So they don't necessarily, they can use any medium, and they don't have to have a particular skill, because probably the way you guys teach it or educate,
Right.
I should say, it's kind of, probably for lack of a better term, basic, so that anyone can get it.
Anyone can get it. You don't have to have any skills at all. So therapy doesn't necessarily mean that you're painting masterpieces. Art therapy, may simply mean that we're having a telehealth call and the therapist says for you to literally draw circles on a piece of paper. Talk to me about what's going on, but while you're doing it, just draw a bunch of circles on a piece of paper. There's an activation with that right, left, the movement and the talking where you start releasing more information. You get a lot more comfortable. It's a lot more fluid.
That's incredible. That's great.
Yeah. No skills required.
Yeah. No, that's probably ideal. That's great. Awesome. Cool. Well, I can definitely pivot on some of the real estate. I like that you're in ALFs. I guess as far as we kind of touched on your origin and your credibility, as far as your current strategy, other than getting Orion off, is there anything that goes along with that in terms of what you're focused most on now? Like, is it, obviously you're in schools and hospitals. Is there something you want to bring on that maybe you haven't, or down the road?
We're actually in talks right now of selling Orion.
Okay.
Which I'll disclose to who at a later date.
Sure.
But we're actually, only because I'm under NDA.
Sure.
But we are in talks of selling Orion, and part of the sale would allow me to retain the licensing rights to all of my protocols. So they would own the software and they would license the protocols for me. But then after the sale, that allows me to go into the ALFs, continue the wellness work. I'm working with 1,500 refugee women right now in Sudan.
Wow.
Where we do conflict area work over there. We have a refugee camp there and we do telehealth with them. So that it's a part of that. The heart work is what I like to call it. I want to continue to do that.
Okay. So even though they would own it, you would still have the rights and the intellectual property to use it.
They would own the software. I would still have the rights to all of the protocols that I wrote, because the protocols in the software for behavioral health, these aren't textbook. I've written every single one, and they're segmented specific to environment, culture, trauma, the type of trauma. Like, for example, a sexual assault, I hate to say it, with one single woman in America is going to have a very different effect from that of multiple in a war zone with multiple soldiers, and you have to treat it differently. And so we write our protocols in that way.
I see. Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, awesome. Well, good luck on that venture. It doesn't seem like it has to be public. It's still under your umbrella to sell it.
Yeah, it is.
Nice. Okay, very
It
cool.
is.
So I guess once you sell it, you still, like you said, you still have a lot of access to the protocols to where you still want to continue to help others in the same situation, regardless if you're building a software or it's just an extension of your company.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I still want to venture back into the ALF space. I took a pause because of everything that's going on the medical side. I needed to really focus on that and stabilize, a newly opened wellness space and really grow it to the potential before I've learned in the past that trying to burn, both ends, it doesn't work. You can only be in one place at one time.
Yes.
But once that space is stable, I would like to go back into the ALF space because I do believe there's a true need for a lot of our seniors and the way that they're aging and the way that we can really scale a property to make it not only a better quality of life for the seniors, but there are a lot of avenues to make it very lucrative from a real estate investment.
Gotcha. Okay. And typically in terms of like funding deals or business or software or anything, how do you usually think about like deploying capital? Do you use your own capital? Do you leverage others? Is it a mix?
It's a mix. So in terms of Color Gallery, my business partner I kind of call him like the guru of finance. He knows, and he's taught me things that I wish I would have met him 20 years ago because I'd already be a millionaire.
Yeah.
He's one of those like, no, don't do it this way, do it this way, and then calculate it this way. So his business credit is insane. So it's to a point where we realistically could go into a real estate property with hard money and then leverage, some of his capital without needing investors. Whereas before I was pulling investors into properties. So I'd find a property, I'd vet the property, I'd make sure it was already lucrative and revenue bearing. And then I would bring them in on the beginning side for a share based upon the liquidity of the asset.
Okay. So you would use other people's money from a capital raise standpoint to invest in the property. Okay.
Yeah. And
Nice.
now it's more of using our own capital and deploying hard money and then doing a refi if needed. Only because hard money, it's a lot faster, it's a lot easier. And I've noticed with real estate properties, it moves the needle faster.
Yeah. You keep more of it. You definitely have more control.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's awesome. But yeah, I think there's a proverb of if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with a team.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you do go with a team, you're starting out because you don't know any better, but you learn the tricks of the trade enough to, if you want to decide to go faster, you can kind of, like you said, use your own capital or use part of your own capital. And most of that goes back in you and your family or your partner's pocket as opposed to outside investors.
Yeah, which I don't mind working with a team. I've worked with teams in the past. I've worked with teams in the past where it ended up great.
Okay.
And I've worked with teams in the past where it went completely south. And out of that lesson, I learned that it's not necessarily working with the team, it's the right team.
Right. Yeah.
The right team. It cannot, I think a couple key points that it can't just be people that want to invest in real estate for the sake of getting a return. They have to have a full understanding of the project, what it is. You have to make sure that if you're used to doing fix and flips and you've done two, and maybe a large mixed use is not for you.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you don't have the experience and you just want to be a limited partner, then go into a syndication versus you may not have enough to bring to the table in a joint venture, right?
Correct.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. I've never syndicated. I don't like to syndicate. I feel like syndication is very messy. There's a lot of parts involved. There's a lot of back end paperwork that I just would prefer to do a joint venture and keep the project small instead of having 40 people on a project and we're having multiple calls and the accountant is sending out 40 different, shareholder reviews. It's just, if I do a team, I would want to keep it limited to 3 people max. The one that went south was a larger joint venture that we attempted. So I think in that lesson, that was the lesson where they can't be new. They can't be novice about the particular project or what you're doing or what it entails or how it's going to move. Because when you do a joint venture, even if they have a lower equity stake, there still has to be some type of contribution. If there's no contribution, then it has to be a syndication. And if you don't understand the project fully, well, now you have, limited partners where you're essentially carrying it.
Yeah. I mean, is it the FCC or the SEC?
SEC.
Yeah, they're pretty strict when it comes to the operating agreement that everyone should have a duty. And it's not, even if you take notes, meeting notes, that's not enough as a equal partner, right?
Right.
So
yes, you nailed it.
totally understood. Okay. No, that's good. Now, I've specialized in some of additional financial vehicles, but have you ever looked into ways to maybe recycle or reuse your capital, maybe more efficiently between deals? So if you had a container of your own capital, have you ever heard where you can use that on a deal, but it's still growing and it's still paying you dividends as if it never left your account?
You mean essentially almost putting it like in a Roth or putting it in an insurance bond and pulling the interest off of that?
It's
And then still use the capital, but it's still growing the interest off of what was already put in?
right. It's more along the lines of what's, I think, something near and dear to me and what I learned earlier on, which is dividend-paying whole life insurance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you using that or have you used it?
I've used it. We're not using it currently. With the capital that we've deployed into the medical space, we probably should have done that first, but that's what happens when you burn sticks at both ends. It's like, why didn't I think to do that?
Yeah. Like I hear from a lot of my clients and even myself, like I learned about this 20 years too late. So yeah, but
Learned about cost segregation 10 years too late.
yeah, depreciation and
and getting the tax benefit on the construction and learned that too late.
yeah.
I know it now though, but
Yeah. And now that you know it, you can still utilize that for your future deals. Obviously, it has to qualify, but it sounds like you're going after properties that would do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. So what do you think, I guess, most investors may misunderstand about either money or financing when it comes to maybe business or even investing?
I think the biggest miss, and this is even for me personally from past experience, I think the biggest miss with investing is that people look at the deal, everything that goes right, instead of looking at everything that can go wrong and trying to mitigate. They look at the revenue, they look at the shares, they want to make sure that all these things are in favor before they put their money in without fully vetting every single thing that can possibly go wrong and then trying to mitigate those things before they could or could not happen.
Okay, so sounds like it might come down to due diligence, or they're counting a lot of chickens
Before they hatch.
Before they hatch, and maybe maybe they're so into the deal, could be emotional, could not be emotional, but like they're looking on only the positive side. And if you have a good team, it's there for a reason, and you can kind of be resourceful and spread the risk and mitigate the risk appropriately.
Right. I think due diligence is a big thing. I think and then I will also say, if something looks like it's too good to be true, in real estate especially, it absolutely is. Absolutely is. It not maybe, it is.
Man, that's so true. Like don't get me wrong, I have a good track record with my JVs and my syndications, but it's not a home run from day one. Like, you have to work at it.
You have to work at it.
Yeah. But I was so anxious, and sometimes I think people get bored in the asset classes, but I feel also that boring is a winner a lot of times, regardless if it's not emotionally satisfying. So I've been doing multifamily and apartment buildings for quite a while. I decided to do what they call velocity banking and take a HELOC from one of my properties, and didn't really know the GP or the operator, but he had a decent track record and still doing this flip in Texas. And it's just not the ARV that he claimed is not selling for what it was. So it's just like, yeah, probably gonna not do flips unless it's like a guarantee, right?
I think the other part that you touched on, though, you said emotion. And I think it's important to note that there's no space, especially in real estate. There's no space for emotion in business. So
Right.
Your team members, you have to fully vet them. And it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with them. It doesn't mean that you're suspicious or you're paranoid. It just means that you have to fully vet them so that you can make sure that they're right for this business. Just like you're interviewing an employee if you run a large corporation. You have to make sure that they're a right fit.
Yeah, I mean, they could be the right fit, but they may not be with the right team. So,
Right. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's why you have to
that's okay.
That's okay. That's perfectly fine. It's just, you would be a great fit, but just not for this particular project.
Yeah. Next one.
But I think sometimes, emotions, they get involved, and it's
Yeah.
well, maybe I can make it work. Well, it's probably going to cost you at the bottom line.
Yeah. It's like, don't force it if you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's feelings get hurt, that's okay, because you're making sure this gets across the finish line the way you intended.
And your responsibility is to, especially if you're the major GP, your responsibility to the investors specifically is to make sure that you're moving in a way so that everything that you promised, or not promised, but everything that you spoke about in regards to the revenue, the due diligence, everything that you delivered stays on track.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the heaviest hat to wear, because when you have novice investors, they do get very emotional. People get very emotional. When money is involved, they get emotional.
Yep.
And it's a very heavy hat to wear when you're responsible for revenue streams, stabilization, and other financial burdens in regards to an asset, and you're trying to keep it on track. And if they're not the right fit, I wouldn't force it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it's a business. So it's like you have to take the emotion out of it.
Because
So
you're just to protect the business.
yeah. So if the numbers don't make sense, next, like, unfortunately,
not necessarily next. I always try to be as transparent as humanly possible. And when I say try to be in real estate, I can be very transparent.
Yeah.
And on the medical side, I'm not able to be as transparent because there's HIPAA compliance and privacy things that are in place. So when our new wellness space isn't returning a certain revenue that it should be because of insurance changes, economic changes, all of that, I can't give you a full breakdown of where all of the money came from.
Yeah.
Because I'm violating, and you have to hold it.
No, that's true. If there's certain things in the healthcare space that you just cannot divulge, even if they're family members, but unfortunately,
you'll face a lawsuit that you don't even want. Probably get shut down. I used to always say, I have a director of healthcare. She's amazing. And I call her my KMOO, keep me out of orange, because I look good in a lot of colors, but orange is not one.
That's great.
So and the reason why I appreciate her is because she's been in the hospital space for 20 years. So from a real estate investment space, for me, my thing is just get it all out. Just make sure you get everything out, answer all the questions. And she's like, no, you can't do that. She was like, we're going to have like people in big black vans come and get us if you do that. And I was like, okay. She said, and let me tell you something. She said, if you thought the real estate commission was bad, she said, you do not want HIPAA coming after you. And I was like,
oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like the people who solve the world's problems, even though it's good, big pharma or whoever else, government, may not like that. Like if you had the cure for cancer, right? Like people would be upset.
They probably would. It's funny that you say that. When they put me in this one particular school years ago, and I had 100 students. They were all African-American. 95 of them were on medication.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I threw a fit. Naturally, I threw a fit because That's what I do in situations like that. And I'm looking at the types of medications that they're on, and I'm looking at the dosages, and I'm looking at the lack of. So of course I went back to Xavier and I'm like, I want to write a paper on this. And he said, you can't do that. I was like, well, why can't I? He was like, because they're going to come after you. He said, so I highly suggest that you do whatever you can in your power to address the students and the parents. He said, do not write a paper about that. He said, you'll have a target on your back before your medical business even gets started. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, Big Pharma is not going to like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Oh.
No, that's true. Yeah. I mean, maybe, yeah, like even if you, yeah, I feel like there was a lot, like I'm Gen X, and I felt like my mom as a baby boomer, there was a lot of misdiagnosed ADD and ADHD, and like everyone of our generation was medicated, and maybe they didn't need to be.
Yeah.
I look back at that and I'm like, they obviously have tests and certain things, but like looking at me as an adult, maybe I was hyper as a kid, but like I'm the most reserved person in the world. Like if my hair was on fire, I would just be like walking out the door like, all right, let's get some water.
Get it out. Right.
Yeah, like nothing really excites me just because I have that reserved personality now as an adult. But
yeah,
looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, I think I may have been misdiagnosed.
I think there's a lot of misdiagnosis, and I think there's a lot of lack of education. My issue, and the reason why I wanted to write the paper, was because I'm Gen X as well.
Okay.
So I came from the day and age where you actually had sped classrooms. You had special education classrooms. Yeah. If you remember, you had a group of kids in that one classroom. They had very visible or significant things that they were dealing with. Well, they changed the legislation to say that if a child is on a psychotropic drug, they're considered sped. Oh. Psychotropic drug is anything that affects the brain chemistry. So if you're on ADHD medication, it's considered psychotropic, which means that now it's sped, which means that now the school system gets a check for every single child that is on that drug, because if you're considered sped, then it's assumed that you need additional resources to be able to aid this child. So for me, it looks incentivized.
Yeah. More money from the school.
If he's hyperactive, we're not going to ask if there's something going on at home. I mean, all young boys are overactive. To be like, come on, like boys are overactive. I have a son. He used to jump off the furniture all the time.
Yep.
Boys are overactive. It's a part of the growth. It's a part of what you guys do.
Yeah.
There's a number of reasons why children can present hyperactivity. It's not necessarily ADHD. I'm not down to ADHD. I'm not saying that it does not exist. But what I am saying is that I think there are other ways to treat it instead of the gut punch is put them on medication.
Yeah. I think that was the easiest catch-all.
Yeah. Put them on medication.
For that time. Yeah. Well, hopefully I didn't take too much of your time. This has been
You're fine. I'm going to go code some more.
All right. Nice. No, this has been a great conversation. Enjoyed getting to meet you and know more about you. So if down the road, if you do want to maybe take a deep dive into, what dividend-paying whole life could fix for you, where you can recapture some of that stuff into your own pocket.
Yeah, definitely.
Be happy to revisit. But other than that, have a great rest of the week and happy coding.
Same to you. Thank you. I will definitely be reaching out about the dividend-based. So you will hear from me again.
Awesome. Well, from one Floridian to another. Enjoy the weather while we have it. And
while we have it.
Yeah. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.